Chapter 3. Julia, taken by his enthusiasm and his fantastic exuberance, accepted his offer. He started her in modest parts, which under his direction she played as she had never played before. He interested the critics in her. He flattered them by letting them think that they had discovered a remarkable actress, and allowed the suggestion to come from them that he should let the public see her as Magda. She was a great hit, and then in quick succession he made her play Nora in The Doll's House, Anne in Man and Superman, and Hedda Gabler. Middlepool was delighted to discover that it had in its midst an actress who it could boast was better than any star in London, and crowded to see her in plays that before it had gone to only from local patriotism. The London paragraphers mentioned her now and then, and a number of enthusiastic patrons of the drama made the journey to Middlepool to see her. They went back full of praise, and 2 or 3 London managers sent representatives to report on her. They were doubtful. She was all very well in Shaw and Ibsen, but what would she do in an ordinary play? The managers had had bitter experiences. On the strength of an outstanding performance in one of these queer plays, they had engaged an actor, only to discover that in any other sort of play, he was no better than anybody else. When Michael joined the company, Julia had been playing in Middlepool for a year. Jimmy started him with Marchbanks in Candida. It was the happy choice one would have expected him to make, for in that part his great beauty was an asset and his lack of warmth no disadvantage. Julia reached over to take out the first of the cardboard cases in which Michael's photographs were kept. She was sitting comfortably on the floor. She turned the early photographs over quickly, looking for that which he had taken when first he came to Middlepool, but when she came upon it, it gave her a pang. For a moment she felt inclined to cry. It had been just like him then. Candida was being played by an older woman, a sound actress who was cast generally for mothers, maiden aunts, or character parts, and Julia, with nothing to do but act 8 times a week, attended the rehearsals. She fell in love with Michael at first sight. She had never seen a more beautiful young man, and she pursued him relentlessly. In due course, Jimmy put on Ghosts, braving the censure of respectable Middlepool, and Michael played the boy, and she played Regina. They heard one another their parts, and after rehearsals lunched, very modestly, together so that they might talk of them. Soon they were inseparable. Julia had little reserve. She flattered Michael outrageously. He was not vain of his good looks. He knew he was handsome and accepted compliments, not exactly with indifference, but as he might have accepted a compliment on a fine old house that had been in his family for generations. It was a well-known fact that it was one of the best houses of its period. One was proud of it and took care of it. But it was just there, as natural to possess as the air one breathed. He was shrewd and ambitious. He knew that his beauty was at present his chief asset, but he knew it could not last forever, and was determined to become a good actor so that he should have something besides his looks to depend on. He meant to learn all he could from Jimmy Langton, and then go to London. "If I play my cards well, I can get some old woman to back me and go into management. One's got to be one's own master. That's the only way to make a packet." Julia soon discovered that he did not much like spending money, and when they ate a meal together, or on a Sunday went for a small excursion, she took care to pay her share of the expenses. She did not mind this. She liked him for counting the pennies, and inclined to be extravagant herself and always a week or 2 behind with her rent. She admired him because he hated to be in debt, and even with the small salary he was getting managed to save up a little every week. He was anxious to have enough put by so that when he went to London he need not accept the first part that was offered him, but could afford to wait till he got one that gave him a real chance. His father had little more than his pension to live on, and it had been a sacrifice to send him to Cambridge. His father, not liking the idea of his going on the stage, had insisted on this. "If you want to be an actor, I suppose I can't stop you," he said. "But damn it all, I insist on your being educated like a gentleman." It gave Julia a good deal of satisfaction to discover that Michael's father was a colonel. It impressed her to hear him speak of an ancestor who had gambled away his fortune at White's during the Regency. And she liked the signet ring Michael wore with the boar's head on it, and the motto, Nemo me impune lacessit. I believe you're prouder of your family than of looking like a Greek god, she told him fondly. Anyone can be good-looking, he answered with his sweet smile, but not everyone can belong to a decent family. To tell you the truth, I'm glad my governor's a gentleman. Julia took her courage in both hands. My father's a vet. For an instant, Michael's face stiffened, but he recovered himself immediately and laughed. Of course, it doesn't really matter what one's father is. I've often heard my father talk of the vet in his regiment. He counted as an officer, of course. Dad always said he was one of the best, and she was glad he'd been to Cambridge. He had rowed for his college, and at one time there was some talk of putting him in the university boat. I should have liked to get my blue. It would have been useful to me on the stage. I'd have got a lot of advertisement out of it. Julia could not tell if he knew that she was in love with him. He never made love to her. He liked her society, and when they found themselves with other people, scarcely left her side. Sometimes they were asked to parties on Sunday, dinner at midday, or a cold, sumptuous supper, and he seemed to think it natural that they should go together and come away together. He kissed her when he left her at her door, but he kissed her as he might have kissed the middle-aged woman with whom he had played Candida. He was friendly, good-humored and kind, but it was distressingly clear that she was no more to him than a comrade. Yet she knew that he was not in love with anybody else. The love letters that women wrote to him he read out to Julia with a chuckle, and when they sent him flowers he immediately gave them to her. What blasted fools they are, he said. What the devil do they think they're going to get out of it? I shouldn't have thought it very hard to guess that, said Julia dryly. Although she knew he took these attentions so lightly, she could not help feeling angry and jealous. I should be a damned fool if I got myself mixed up with some woman in Middlepool. After all, they're mostly flappers. Before I knew where I was, I'd have some irate father coming along and saying, now you must marry the girl. She tried to find out whether he had had any adventures while he was playing with Benson's company. She gathered that one or two of the girls had been rather inclined to make nuisances of themselves. But he thought it was a terrible mistake to get mixed up with any of the actresses a chap was playing with. It was bound to lead to trouble. And you know how people gossip in a company. Everyone would know everything in 24 hours. And when you start a thing like that, you don't know what you're letting yourself in for. I wasn't risking anything. When he wanted a bit of fun, he waited till they were within a reasonable distance of London, and then he would race up to town and pick up a girl at the Globe restaurant. Of course it was expensive, and when you came to think of it, it wasn't really worth the money. Besides, he played a lot of cricket in Benson's company, and golf when he got the chance, and that sort of thing was rotten for the eye. Julia told a thumping lie. Jimmy always says I'd be a much better actress if I had an affair. Don't you believe it? He's just a dirty old man. With him, I suppose. I mean, you might just as well say that I'd give a better performance of Marchbanks if I wrote poetry. They talked so much together that it was inevitable for her at last to learn his views on marriage. I think an actor's a perfect fool to marry young. There are so many cases in which it absolutely ruins a chap's career, especially if he marries an actress. He becomes a star and then she's a millstone round his neck. She insists on playing with him, and if he's in management, he has to give her leading parts, and if he engages someone else, there are most frightful scenes. And of course, for an actress, it's insane. There's always the chance of her having a baby, and she may have to refuse a damned good part. She's out of the public eye for months, and you know what the public is. Unless they see you all the time, they forget that you ever existed. Marriage? What did she care about marriage? Her heart melted within her when she looked into his deep, friendly eyes, and she shivered with delightful anguish when she considered his shining, russet hair. There was nothing that he could have asked her that she would not gladly have given him. The thought never entered his lovely head. Of course he likes me, she said to herself. He likes me better than anyone. He even admires me. But I don't attract him that way. She did everything to seduce him except slip into bed with him, and she only did not do that because there was no opportunity. She began to fear that they knew one another too well for it to seem possible that their relations should change, and she reproached herself bitterly because she had not rushed to a climax when first they came in contact with one another. He had too sincere an affection for her now ever to become her lover. She found out when his birthday was and gave him a gold cigarette case, which she knew was the thing he wanted more than anything in the world. It cost a good deal more than she could afford, and he smilingly reproached her for her extravagance. He never dreamt what ecstatic pleasure it gave her to spend her money on him. When her birthday came along, he gave her 6 pairs of silk stockings. She noticed at once that they were not of very good quality, poor lamb. He had not been able to bring himself to spring to that, but she was so touched that he should give her anything that she could not help crying. "What an emotional little thing you are," he said, but he was pleased and touched to see her tears. She found his thrift rather an engaging trait. He could not bear to throw his money about. He was not exactly mean, but he was not generous. Once or twice at restaurants she thought he undertipped the waiter, but he paid no attention to her when she ventured to remonstrate. He gave the exact 10%, and when he could not make the exact sum to a penny, asked the waiter for change. "Neither a borrower nor a lender be," he quoted from Polonius. When some member of the company, momentarily hard up, tried to borrow from him, it was in vain, but he refused so frankly, with so much heartiness, that he did not affront. "My dear old boy, I'd love to lend you a quid, but I'm absolutely stony. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent at the end of the week." For some months, Michael was so much occupied with his own parts that he failed to notice how good an actress Julia was. Of course, he read the reviews and their praise of Julia, but he read summarily, without paying much attention till he came to the remarks the critics made about him. He was pleased by their approval, but not cast down by their censure. He was too modest to resent an unfavorable criticism. "I suppose I was rotten," he would say ingenuously. His most engaging trait was his good humor. He bore Jimmy Langton's abuse with equanimity. When tempers grew frayed during a long rehearsal, he remained serene. It was impossible to quarrel with him. One day he was sitting in front watching the rehearsal of an act in which he did not appear. It ended with a powerful and moving scene in which Julia had the opportunity to give a fine display of acting. When the stage was being set for the next act, Julia came through the pass door and sat down beside Michael. He did not speak to her, but looked sternly in front of him. She threw him a surprised look. It was unlike him not to give her a smile and a friendly word. Then she saw that he was clenching his jaw to prevent its trembling, and that his eyes were heavy with tears. "What's the matter, darling?" "Don't talk to me. You dirty little bitch, you've made me cry." "Angel!" The tears came to her own eyes and streamed down her face. She was so pleased, so flattered. "Oh, damn it," he sobbed. "I can't help it." He took a handkerchief out of his pocket and dried his eyes. "I love him, I love him, I love him." Presently he blew his nose. "I'm beginning to feel better now, but my God, you shattered me." "It's not a bad scene, is it?" "The scene be damned, it was you. You just wrung my heart. The critics are right, damn it, you're an actress and no mistake. Have you only just discovered it? I knew you were pretty good, but I never knew you were as good as all that. You make the rest of us look like a piece of cheese. You're going to be a star. Nothing can stop you." "Well then, you shall be my leading man. Fat chance I'd have of that with a London manager." Julia had an inspiration. "Then you must go into management yourself and make me your leading lady." He paused. He was not a quick thinker and needed a little time to let a notion sink into his mind. He smiled. "You know, that's not half a bad idea." They talked it over at luncheon. Julia did most of the talking while he listened to her with absorbed interest. "Of course, the only way to get decent parts consistently is to run one's own theatre," he said. "I know that." The money was the difficulty. They discussed how much was the least they could start on. Michael thought £5,000 was the minimum. But how in heaven's name could they raise a sum like that? Of course, some of those middle-pool manufacturers were rolling in money, but you could hardly expect them to fork out £5,000 to start a couple of young actors who had only a local reputation. Besides, they were jealous of London. "You'll have to find your rich old woman," said Julia gaily. She only half believed all she had been saying, but it excited her to discuss a plan that would bring her into a close and constant relation with Michael. But he was being very serious. "I don't believe one could hope to make a success in London unless one were pretty well known already. The thing to do would be to act there in other managements for 3 or 4 years first. One's got to know the ropes, and the advantage of that would be that one would have had time to read plays. It would be madness to start in management unless one had at least 3 plays, one of them out to be a winner. Of course, if one did that, one ought to make a point of acting together so that the public got accustomed to seeing the two names on the same bill. I don't know that there's much in that. The great thing is to have good, strong parts. There's no doubt in my mind that it would be much easier to find backers if one had made a bit of a reputation in London." Chapter 4. It was getting on for Easter, and Jimmy Langton always closed his theatre for Holy Week. Julia did not quite know what to do with herself. It seemed hardly worthwhile to go to Jersey. She was surprised to receive a letter one morning from Mrs. Gosselin, Michael's mother, saying that it would give the Colonel and herself so much pleasure if she could come with Michael to spend the week at Cheltenham. When she showed the letter to Michael, he beamed. "I asked her to invite you. I thought it would be more polite than if I just took you along." "You are sweet. Of course I shall love to come." Her heart beat with delight. The prospect of spending a whole week with Michael was enchanting. It was just like his good nature to come to the rescue when he knew she was at a loose end. But she saw there was something he wanted to say, yet did not quite like to. "What is it?" He gave a little laugh of embarrassment. "Well, dear, you know, my father's rather old-fashioned, and there are some things he can't be expected to understand. Of course, I don't want you to tell a lie or anything like that, but I think it would seem rather funny to him if he knew your father was a vet. When I wrote and asked if I could bring you down, I said he was a doctor." "Oh, that's all right." Julia found the Colonel a much less alarming person than she had expected. He was thin and rather small, with a lined face and close-cropped white hair. His features had a worn distinction. He reminded you of a head on an old coin that had been in circulation too long. He was civil but reserved. He was neither peppery nor tyrannical as Julia, from her knowledge of the stage, expected a colonel to be. She could not imagine him shouting out words of command in that courteous, rather cold voice. He had in point of fact retired with honorary rank after an entirely undistinguished career, and for many years had been content to work in his garden and play bridge at his club. He read the Times, went to church on Sunday, and accompanied his wife to tea parties. Mrs. Gosselin was a tall, stoutish, elderly woman, much taller than her husband, who gave you the impression that she was always trying to diminish her height. She had the remains of good looks, so that you said to yourself that when young she must have been beautiful. She wore her hair parted in the middle with a bun on the nape of her neck. Her classic features and her size made her at first meeting somewhat imposing, but Julia quickly discovered that she was very shy. Her movements were stiff and awkward. She was dressed fussily, with a sort of old-fashioned richness which did not suit her. Julia, who was entirely without self-consciousness, found the elder woman's deprecating attitude rather touching. She had never known an actress to speak to, and did not quite know how to deal with the predicament in which she now found herself. The house was not at all grand, a small detached stucco house in a garden with a laurel hedge, and since the Goslins had been for some years in India, there were great trays of brassware and brass bowls, pieces of Indian embroidery, and highly carved Indian tables. It was cheap bazaar stuff, and you wondered how anyone had thought it worth bringing home. Julia was quick-witted. It did not take her long to discover that the Colonel, notwithstanding his reserve, and Mrs. Gosselin, notwithstanding her shyness, were taking stock of her. The thought flashed through her mind that Michael had brought her down for his parents to inspect her. Why? There was only one possible reason, and when she thought of it, her heart leaped. She saw that he was anxious for her to make a good impression. She felt instinctively that she must conceal the actress, and without effort, without deliberation, merely because she felt it would please, she played the part of the simple, modest, ingenuous girl who had lived a quiet country life. She walked round the garden with the colonel and listened intelligently while he talked of peas and asparagus. She helped Mrs. Gosselin with the flowers and dusted the ornaments with which the drawing-room was crowded. She talked to her of Michael. She told her how cleverly he acted and how popular he was, and she praised his looks. She saw that Mrs. Gosselin was very proud of him, and with a flash of intuition saw that it would please her if she let her see with the utmost delicacy, as though she would have liked to keep it a secret but betrayed herself unwittingly, that she was head over ears in love with him. "Of course we hope he'll do well," said Mrs. Gosselin. "We didn't much like the idea of his going on the stage. You see, on both sides of the family, we're army, but he was set on it." "Yes, of course, I see what you mean. I know it doesn't mean so much as when I was a girl, but after all, he was born a gentleman." "Oh, but some very nice people go on the stage nowadays, you know. It's not like in the old days." "No, I suppose not. I'm so glad he brought you down here. I was a little nervous about it. I thought you'd be made up and perhaps a little loud. No one would dream you were on the stage." "I should damn well think not. Haven't I been giving a perfect performance of the village maiden for the last 48 hours? Sss. The colonel began to make little jokes with her, and sometimes he pinched her ear playfully. "Now you mustn't flirt with me, Colonel," she cried, giving him a roguish, delicious glance. "Just because I'm an actress, you think you can take liberties with me." "George, George," smiled Mrs. Gosselin, and then to Julia. "He always was a terrible flirt. Gosh, I'm going down like a barrel of oysters." Mrs. Gosselin told her about India. How strange it was to have all those colored servants, but how nice the society was, only army people and Indian civilians, but still it wasn't like home, and how glad she was to get back to England. They were to leave on Easter Monday because they were playing that night, and on Sunday evening after supper, Colonel Gosselin said he was going to his study to write letters. A minute or two later, Mrs. Gosselin said she must go and see the cook. When they were left alone, Michael, standing with his back to the fire, lit a cigarette. "I'm afraid it's been very quiet down here. I hope you haven't had an awfully dull time." "It's been heavenly. You've made a tremendous success with my people. They've taken an enormous fancy to you." "God, I've worked for it," thought Julia, but aloud said, "How do you know?" "Oh, I can see it. Father told me you were very ladylike and not a bit like an actress, and Mother says you're so sensible." Julia looked down as though the extravagance of these compliments were almost more than she could bear. Michael came over and stood in front of her. The thought occurred to her that he looked like a handsome young footman applying for a situation. He was strangely nervous. Her heart thumped against her ribs. "Julia, dear, will you marry me?" For the last week she had asked herself whether or not he was going to propose to her, and now that he had at last done so, she was strangely confused. "Michael." "Not immediately, I don't mean. But when we've got our feet on the ladder, I know that you can act me off the stage, but we get on together like a house on fire. And when we do go into management, I think we'd make a pretty good team. And you know I do like you most awfully. I mean, I've never met anyone who's a patch on you." "The blasted fool, why does he talk all that rot? Doesn't he know I'm crazy to marry him? Why doesn't he kiss me, kiss me, kiss me? I wonder if I dare tell him I'm absolutely sick with love for him." "Michael, you're so handsome. No one could refuse to marry you." "Darling, I'd better get up. He wouldn't know how to sit down. God, that scene that Jimmy made him do over and over again." She got on her feet and put up her face to his. He took her in his arms and kissed her lips. "I must tell Mother." He broke away from her and went to the door. "Mother, Mother!" In a moment the Colonel and Mrs. Gosselin came in. They bore a look of happy expectancy. By God, it was a put-up job. "Mother, Father, we're engaged." Mrs. Gosselin began to cry. With her awkward, lumbering gait, she came up to Julia, flung her arms round her, and, sobbing, kissed her. The Colonel wrung his son's hand in a manly way, and releasing Julia from his wife's embrace, kissed her too. He was deeply moved. All this emotion worked on Julia, and though she smiled happily, the tears coursed down her cheeks. Michael watched the affecting scene with sympathy. "What do you say to a bottle of pop to celebrate?" he said. It looks to me as though Mother and Julia were thoroughly upset. The ladies, God bless 'em, said the Colonel when their glasses were filled. Chapter 5. Julia now was looking at the photograph of herself in her wedding dress. Christ, what a sight I looked. They decided to keep their engagement to themselves, and Julia told no one about it but Jimmy Langton, 2 or 3 girls in the company, and her dresser. She vowed them to secrecy, and could not understand how within 48 hours everyone in the theatre seemed to know about it. Julia was divinely happy. She loved Michael more passionately than ever, and would gladly have married him there and then, but his good sense prevailed. They were at present no more than a couple of provincial actors, and to start their conquest of London as a married couple would jeopardize their chances. Julia showed him as clearly as she knew how, and this was very clearly indeed, that she was quite willing to become his mistress, but this he refused. He was too honourable to take advantage of her. "I could not love thee, dear, so much, loved I not honour more," he quoted. He felt sure that when they were married they would bitterly regret it if they had lived together before as man and wife. Julia was proud of his principles. He was a kind and affectionate lover, but in a very short while seemed to take her a trifle for granted. By his manner, friendly but casual, you might have thought they had been married for years. But he showed great good nature in allowing Julia to make love to him. She adored to sit cuddled up to him with his arm round her waist, her face against his, and it was heaven when she could press her eager mouth against his rather thin lips. Though when they sat side by side like that, he preferred to talk of the parts they were studying or make plans for the future, he made her very happy. She never tired of praising his beauty. It was heavenly when she told him how exquisite his nose was and how lovely his russet, curly hair, to feel his hold on her tighten a little and to see the tenderness in his eyes. "Darling, you'll make me as vain as a peacock. It would be so silly to pretend you weren't divinely handsome." Julia thought he was, and she said it because she liked saying it, but she said it also because she knew he liked to hear it. He had affection and admiration for her, he felt at ease with her, and he had confidence in her. But she was well aware that he was not in love with her. She consoled herself by thinking that he loved her as much as he was capable of loving, and she thought that when they were married, when they slept together, her own passion would excite an equal passion in him. Meanwhile, she exercised all her tact and all her self-control. She knew she could not afford to bore him. She knew she must never let him feel that she was a burden or a responsibility. He might desert her for a game of golf or to lunch with a casual acquaintance. She never let him see for a moment that she was hurt, and with an inkling that her success as an actress strengthened his feeling for her, she worked like a dog to play well. When they had been engaged for rather more than a year, an American manager, looking for talent and having heard of Jimmy Langton's repertory company, came to Middlepool and was greatly taken by Michael. He sent him round a note asking him to come to his hotel on the following afternoon. Michael, breathless with excitement, showed it to Julia. It could only mean that he was going to offer him a part. Her heart sank, but she pretended that she was as excited as he and went with him next day to the hotel. She was to wait in the lobby while Michael saw the great man. "Wish me luck," he whispered, as he turned from her to enter the lift. "It's almost too good to be true." Julia sat in a great leather armchair, willing with all her might the American manager to offer a part that Michael would refuse, or a salary that he felt it would be beneath his dignity to accept, or alternatively that he should get Michael to read the part he had in view and come to the conclusion that he could not touch it. But when she saw Michael coming towards her half an hour later, his eyes bright and his step swinging, she knew he had clicked. For a moment she thought she was going to be sick, and when she forced on her face an eager, happy smile, she felt that her muscles were stiff and hard. "It's all right. He says it's a damned good part, a boy's part, 19, 8 or 10 weeks in New York and then on the road. It's a safe 40 weeks with John Drew, $250 a week." "Oh, darling, how wonderful for you." It was quite clear that he had accepted with alacrity. The thought of refusing had never even occurred to him. "And she thought, if they'd offered me $1,000 a week, I wouldn't have gone if it meant being separated from Michael. Black despair seized her. She could do nothing. She must pretend to be as delighted as he was. He was too much excited to sit still and took her out into the crowded street to walk. It's a wonderful chance. Of course, America's expensive, but I ought to be able to live on $50 a week at the outside. They say the Americans are awfully hospitable, and I shall get a lot of free meals. I don't see why I shouldn't save $8,000 in the 40 weeks, and that's £1,600. He doesn't love me. He doesn't care a damn about me. I hate him. I'd like to kill him. Blast that American manager. And if he takes me on for a second year, I'm to get 300. That means that in 2 years I'd have the best part of £4,000, almost enough to start management on. A second year! For a moment, Julia lost control of herself and her voice was heavy with tears. Do you mean to say you'll be gone 2 years? Oh, I should come back next summer, of course. They pay my fare back and I'd go and live at home so as not to spend any money. I don't know how I'm going to get on without you. She said the words very brightly so that they sounded polite but somewhat casual. Well, we can have a grand time together in the summer, and you know, a year, 2 years at the outside, well, it passes like a flash of lightning. Michael had been walking at random, but Julia, without his noticing, had guided him in the direction she wished, and now they arrived in front of the theatre. She stopped. I'll see you later. I've got to pop up and see Jimmy. His face fell. You're not going to leave me now? I must talk to somebody. I thought we might go and have a snack together before the show. I'm terribly sorry. Jimmy's expecting me and you know what he is. Michael gave her his sweet, good-natured smile. Oh, well, go on then. I'm not going to hold it up against you because for once you've let me down. He walked on and she went in by the stage door. Jimmy Langton had arranged himself a tiny flat under the roof to which you gained access through the balcony. She rang the bell of his front door and he opened it himself. He was surprised but pleased to see her. Hello, Julia, come in. She walked past him without a word, and when they got into his sitting room, untidy, littered with typescript plays, books, and other rubbish, the remains of his frugal luncheon still on a tray by his desk, she turned and faced him. Her jaw was set and her eyes were frowning. You devil! With a swift gesture, she went up to him, seized him by his loose shirt collar with both hands and shook him. He struggled to get free of her, but she was strong and violent. Stop it! Stop it! You devil! You swine! You filthy low-down cad! He took a swing and with his open hand gave her a great smack on the face. She instinctively loosened her grip on him and put her own hand up to her cheek, for he had hurt her. She burst out crying. You brute! You rotten hound to hit a woman! You put that where the monkey put the nuts, dearie. Didn't you know that when a woman hits me, I always hit back? I didn't hit you. You damn near throttled me. You deserved it. Oh my God, I'd like to kill you. Now sit down, ducky, and I'll give you a drop of scotch to pull you together. And then you can tell me all about it. Julia looked round for a big chair into which she could conveniently sink. Christ, the place is like a pigsty. Why the hell don't you get a charwoman in? With an angry gesture, she swept the books onto the floor from an armchair, threw herself in it, and began to cry in earnest. He poured her out a stiff dose of whiskey, added a drop of soda, and made her drink it. Now what's all this Tosca stuff about? Michael's going to America. Is he? She wrenched herself away from the arm he had round her shoulder. How could you? How could you? I had nothing to do with it. That's a lie. I suppose you didn't even know that filthy American manager was in Middlepool. Of course it's your doing. You did it deliberately to separate us. Oh, dearie, you're doing me an injustice. In point of fact, I don't mind telling you that I said to him he could have anyone in the company he liked with the one exception of Michael Gosselin. Julia did not see the look in Jimmy's eyes when he told her this, but if she had, would have wondered why he was looking as pleased as if he had pulled off a very clever little trick. Even me, she said. I knew he didn't want women. They've got plenty of their own. It's men they want who know how to wear their clothes and don't spit in the drawing room. Oh, Jimmy, don't let Michael go! I can't bear it. How can I prevent it? His contract's up at the end of the season. It's a wonderful chance for him. But I love him. I want him. Supposing he sees someone else in America? Supposing some American heiress falls in love with him? If he doesn't love you any more than that, I should have thought you'd be well rid of him. The remark revived Julia's fury. You rotten old eunuch, what do you know about love? These women, Jimmy sighed. If you try to go to bed with them, they say you're a dirty old man, and if you don't, they say you're a rotten old eunuch. Oh, you don't understand. He's so frightfully handsome, they'll fall for him like a row of ninepins, and poor lamb. He's so susceptible to flattery. Anything can happen in 2 years. What's this about 2 years? If he's a success, he's to stay another year. Well, don't worry your head about that. He'll be back at the end of the season, and back for good. That manager only saw him in Candida. It's the only part he's halfway decent in. Take my word for it. It won't be long before they find out they've been sold a pup. He's going to be a flop. What do you know about acting? Everything. I'd like to scratch your eyes out. I warn you that if you attempt to touch me, I shan't give you a little bit of a slap. I shall give you such a biff on the jaw that you won't be able to eat in comfort for a week. By God, I believe you'd do it. Do you call yourself a gentleman? Not even when I'm drunk. Julia giggled, and Jimmy felt the worst of the scene was over. Now you know just as well as I do that you can act him off his head. I tell you, you're going to be the greatest actress since Mrs. Kendall. What do you want to go and hamper yourself with a man who'll always be a millstone round your neck? You want to go into management, he'll want to play opposite you. He'll never be good enough, my dear. He's got looks. I can carry him. You've got a pretty good opinion of yourself, haven't you? But you're wrong. If you want to make a success, you can't afford to have a leading man who's not up to the mark. I don't care. I'd rather marry him and be a failure than be a success and married to somebody else. Are you a virgin? Julia giggled again. I don't know that it's any business of yours, but in point of fact I am. I thought you were. Well, unless it means something to you, why don't you go over to Paris with him for a fortnight when we close? He won't be sailing till August. It might get him out of your system. Oh, he wouldn't. He's not that sort of man. You see, he's by way of being a gentleman. Even the upper classes propagate their species. You don't understand, said Julia haughtily. I bet you don't either. Julia did not condescend to reply. She was really very unhappy. I can't live without him, I tell you. What am I to do with myself when he's away? Stay on with me. I'll give you a contract for another year. I've got a lot of new parts I want to give you, and I've got a juvenile in my eye who's a find. You'll be surprised how much easier you'll find it when you've got a chap opposite you who'll really give you something. You can have £12 a week. Julia went up to him and stared into his eyes searchingly. Have you done all this to get me to stay on for another year? Have you broken my heart and ruined my whole life just to keep me in your rotten theatre? I swear I haven't. I like you and I admire you, and we've done better business the last 2 years than we've ever done before. But damn it, I wouldn't play you a dirty trick like that. You liar, you filthy liar. I swear it's the truth. Prove it then, she said violently. How can I prove it? You know I'm decent, really? Give me £15 a week and I'll believe you. £15 a week? You know what our takings are. How can I? Oh, well, all right. But I shall have to pay £3 out of my own pocket. A fat lot I care. Chapter 6. After a fortnight of rehearsals, Michael was thrown out of the part for which he had been engaged, and for 3 or 4 weeks was left to kick his heels about till something else could be found for him. He opened in due course in a play that ran less than a month in New York. It was sent on the road, but languished and was withdrawn. After another wait, he was given a part in a costume play where his good looks shone to such advantage that his indifferent acting was little noticed, and in this he finished the season. There was no talk of renewing his contract. Indeed, the manager who had engaged him was caustic in his comments. Gee, I'd give something to get even with that fellow Langton, the son of a bitch, he said. He knew what he was doing all right when he landed me with that stick. Julia wrote to Michael constantly, pages and pages of love and gossip, while he answered once a week, 4 pages exactly in a neat, precise hand. He always ended up by sending her his best love and signing himself hers very affectionately, but the rest of his letter was more informative than passionate. Yet she awaited its coming in an agony of impatience and read it over and over again. Though he wrote cheerfully, saying little about the theatre except that the parts they gave him were rotten, and the plays in which he was expected to act beneath contempt, news travels in the theatrical world, and Julia knew that he had not made good. I suppose it's beastly of me, she thought, but thank God, thank God. When he announced the date of his sailing, she could not contain her joy. She got Jimmy to arrange his program that she might go and meet him at Liverpool. If the boat comes in late, I shall probably stay the night, she told Jimmy. He smiled ironically. I suppose you think that in the excitement of homecoming you may work the trick. What a beastly little man you are. Come off it, dear. My advice to you is get him a bit tight and then lock yourself in a room with him and tell him you won't let him out till he's made a dishonest woman of you. But when she was starting, he came to the station with her. As she was getting into the carriage, he took her hand and patted it. Feeling nervous, dear? Oh, Jimmy dear, wild with happiness and sick with anxiety. Well, good luck to you. And don't forget you're much too good for him. You're young and pretty, and you're the greatest actress in England. When the train steamed out, Jimmy went to the station bar and had a whiskey and soda. Lord, what fools these mortals be, he sighed. But Julia stood up in the empty carriage and looked at herself in the glass. Mouth too large, face too puddingy, nose too fleshy. Thank God I've got good eyes and good legs. Exquisite legs. I wonder if I've got too much makeup on. He doesn't like makeup off the stage. I look bloody without rouge. My eyelashes are all right. Damn it all, I don't look so bad. Uncertain till the last moment whether Jimmy would allow her to go, Julia had not been able to let Michael know that she was meeting him. He was surprised and frankly delighted to see her. His beautiful eyes beamed with pleasure. You're more lovely than ever, she said. Oh, don't be so silly, he laughed, squeezing her arm affectionately. You haven't got to go back till after dinner, have you? I haven't got to go back till tomorrow. I've taken a couple of rooms at the Adelphi so that we can have a real talk. The Adelphi's a bit grand, isn't it? Oh, well, you don't come back from America every day. Damn the expense. Extravagant little thing, aren't you? I didn't know when we'd dock, so I told my people I'd wire when I was getting down to Cheltenham. I'll tell them I'll be coming along tomorrow. When they got to the hotel, Michael came to Julia's room, at her suggestion, so that they could talk in peace and quiet. She sat on his knees with her arm round his neck, her cheek against his. Oh, it's so good to be home again, she sighed. You don't have to tell me that, he said, not understanding that she referred to his arms and not to his arrival. Do you still like me? Rather. She kissed him fondly. Oh, you don't know how I've missed you. I was an awful flop in America, he said. I didn't tell you in my letters because I thought it would only worry you. They thought me rotten. Michael, she cried, as though she could not believe him. The fact is, I suppose, I'm too English. They don't want me another year. I didn't think they did, but just as a matter of form, I asked them if they were going to exercise their option, and they said no, not at any price. Julia was silent. She looked deeply concerned, but her heart was beating with exultation. I honestly don't care, you know. I didn't like America. It's a smack in the eye, of course. It's no good denying that. But the only thing is to grin and bear it. If you only knew the people one has to deal with, why, compared with some of them, Jimmy Langton's a great gentleman. Even if they had wanted me to stay, I should have refused. Though he put a brave face on it, Julia felt that he was deeply mortified. He must have had to put up with a good deal of unpleasantness. She hated him to have been made unhappy, but oh, she was so relieved. What are you going to do now? She asked quietly. Well, I shall go home for a bit and think things over. Then I shall go to London and see if I can't get a part. She knew that it was no good suggesting that he should come back to Middlepool. Jimmy Langton would not have him. You wouldn't like to come with me, I suppose? Julia could hardly believe her ears. Me? Darling, you know I'd go anywhere in the world with you. Your contract's up at the end of this season. And if you want to get anywhere, you've got to make a stab at London soon. I saved every bob I could in America. They all called me a tightwad, but I just let them talk. I've brought back between 12 and £1,500. Michael, how on earth can you have done that? I didn't give much away, you know. He smiled happily. Of course it's not enough to start management on, but it's enough to get married on. I mean, we'd have something to fall back on if we didn't get parts right away or happen to be out of a job for a few months. It took Julia a second or two to understand what he meant. Do you mean to say get married now? Of course it's a risk without anything in prospect, but one has to take a risk sometimes. Julia took his head in both her hands and pressed his lips with hers. Then she gave a sigh. Darling, you're wonderful and you're as beautiful as a Greek god, but you're the biggest damn fool I've ever known in my life. They went to a theatre that night and at supper drank champagne to celebrate their reunion and toast their future. When Michael accompanied her to her room, she held up her face to his. Do you want me to say good night to you in the passage? I'll just come in for a minute. Better not, darling, she said with quiet dignity. She felt like a high-born damsel with all the traditions of a great and ancient family to keep up. Her purity was a pearl of great price. She also felt that she was making a wonderfully good impression. Of course he was a great gentleman, and damn it all, it behooved her to be a great lady. She was so pleased with her performance that when she had got into her room and somewhat noisily locked the door, she paraded up and down, bowing right and left graciously to her obsequious retainers. She stretched out her lily-white hand for the trembling old steward to kiss. As a baby, he had often dandled her on his knee, and when he pressed it with his pallid lips, she felt something fall upon it. A tear. Chapter 7. The first year of their marriage would have been stormy except for Michael's placidity. It needed the excitement of getting a part or a first night, the gaiety of a party where he had drunk several glasses of champagne to turn his practical mind to thoughts of love. No flattery, no allurements could tempt him when he had an engagement next day for which he had to keep his brain clear or a round of golf for which he needed a steady eye. Julia made frantic scenes. She was jealous of his friends at the Green Room Club, jealous of the games that took him away from her, and jealous of the men's luncheons he went to under the pretext that he must cultivate people who might be useful to them. It infuriated her that when she worked herself up into a passion of tears, he should sit there quite calmly, with his hands crossed and a good-humored smile on his handsome face, as though she were merely making herself ridiculous. "You don't think I'm running after any other woman, do you?" he asked. "How do I know?" "It's quite obvious that you don't care 2 straws for me." "You know you're the only woman in the world for me." "My God. I don't know what you want." "I want love. I thought I'd married the handsomest man in England, and I've married a tailor's dummy." "Don't be so silly. I'm just the ordinary, normal Englishman. I'm not an Italian organ grinder." She swept up and down the room. They had a small flat at Buckingham Gate, and there was not much space, but she did her best. She threw up her hands to heaven. "I might be squint-eyed and humpbacked. I might be 50. Am I so unattractive as all that? It's so humiliating to have to beg for love. Misery, misery." "That was a good movement, dear. As if you were throwing a cricket ball. Remember that." She gave him a look of scorn. "That's all you can think of. My heart is breaking, and you can talk of a movement that I made quite accidentally." But he saw by the expression of her face that she was registering it in her memory, and he knew that when the occasion arose, she would make effective use of it. After all, love isn't everything. It's all very well at its proper time and in its proper place. We had a lot of fun on our honeymoon. That's what a honeymoon's for, but now we've got to get down to work. They had been lucky. They had managed to get fairly good parts together in a play that had proved a success. Julia had one good acting scene in which she had brought down the house, and Michael's astonishing beauty had made a sensation. Michael, with his gentlemanly push, with his breezy good nature, had got them both a lot of publicity, and their photographs appeared in the illustrated papers. They were asked to a number of parties, and Michael, notwithstanding his thriftiness, did not hesitate to spend money on entertaining people who might be of service. Julia was impressed by his lavishness on these occasions. An actor-manager offered Julia the leading part in his next play, and though there was no part for Michael and she was anxious to refuse it, he would not let her. He said they could not afford to let sentiment stand in the way of business. He eventually got a part in a costume play. They were both acting when the war broke out. To Julia's pride and anguish, Michael enlisted at once, but with the help of his father, one of whose old brother officers was an important personage at the War Office, he very soon got a commission. When he went out to France, Julia bitterly regretted the reproaches she had so often heaped upon him, and made up her mind that if he were killed, she would commit suicide. She wanted to become a nurse so that she could go out to France too and at least be on the same soil as he. But he made her understand that patriotism demanded that she should go on acting, and she could not resist what might very well be his dying request. Michael thoroughly enjoyed the war. He was popular in the regimental mess, and the officers of the old army accepted him almost at once, even though he was an actor, as one of themselves. It was as though the family of soldiers from which he was born had set a seal on him, so that he fell instinctively into the manner and way of thinking of the professional soldier. He had tact and a pleasant manner, and he knew how to pull strings adroitly. It was inevitable that he should get on the staff of some general. He showed himself possessed of considerable organizing capacity, and the last 3 years of the war he passed at GHQ. He ended it as a major, with the Military Cross and the Legion of Honor. Meanwhile, Julia had been playing a succession of important parts and was recognized as the best of the younger actresses. Throughout the war, the theatre was very prosperous, and she profited by being seen in plays that had long runs. Salaries went up, and with Michael to advise her, she was able to extort £80 a week from reluctant managers. Michael came over to England on his leaves, and Julia was divinely happy. Though he was in no more danger than if he had been sheep farming in New Zealand, she acted as though the brief periods he spent with her were the last days the doomed man would ever enjoy on earth. She treated him as though he had just come from the horror of the trenches and was tender, considerate, and unexacting. It was just before the end of the war that she fell out of love with him. She was pregnant at the time. Michael had judged it imprudent to have a baby just then, but she was nearly 30 and thought that if they were going to have one at all, they ought to delay no longer. She was so well established on the stage that she could afford not to appear for a few months, and with the possibility that Michael might be killed at any moment. It was true, he said he was as safe as a house. He only said that to reassure her, and even generals were killed sometimes. If she was to go on living, she must have a child by him. The baby was expected at the end of the year. She looked forward to Michael's next leave as she had never done before. She was feeling very well, but she had a great yearning to feel his arms around her. She felt a little lost, a little helpless, and she wanted his protective strength. He came looking wonderfully handsome in his well-cut uniform with the red tabs and the crown on his shoulder straps. He had filled out a good deal as the result of the hardships of GHQ, and his skin was tanned. With his close-cropped hair, breezy manner, and military carriage, he looked every inch a soldier. He was in great spirits, not only because he was home for a few days, but because the end of the war was in sight. He meant to get out of the army as quickly as possible. What was the good of having a bit of influence if you didn't use it? So many young men had left the stage, either from patriotism or because life was made intolerable for them by the patriotic who stayed at home, and finally owing to conscription, that leading parts had been in the hands either of people who were inapt for military service or those who had been so badly wounded that they had got their discharge. There was a wonderful opening, and Michael saw that if he were available quickly, he could get his choice of parts. When he had recalled himself to the recollection of the public, they could look about for a theatre, and with the reputation Julia had now acquired, it would be safe to start in management. They talked late into the night, and then they went to bed. She cuddled up to him voluptuously, and he put his arms round her. After 3 months of abstinence, he was amorous. "You're the most wonderful little wife," he whispered. He pressed his mouth to hers. She was filled on a sudden with a faint disgust. She had to resist an inclination to push him away. Before, to her passionate nostrils, his body, his young, beautiful body, had seemed to have a perfume of flowers and honey, and this had been one of the things that had most enchained her to him. But now, in some strange way, it had left him. She realized that he no longer smelt like a youth, he smelt like a man. She felt a little sick. She could not respond to his ardor. She was eager that he should get his desire satisfied quickly, turn over on his side, and go to sleep. For long she lay awake. She was dismayed. Her heart sank because she knew she had lost something that was infinitely precious to her, and pitying herself, she was inclined to cry. But at the same time, she was filled with a sense of triumph. It seemed a revenge that she enjoyed for the unhappiness he had caused her. She was free of the bondage in which her senses had held her to him, and she exulted. Now she could deal with him on equal terms. She stretched her legs out in bed and sighed with relief. By God, it's grand to be one's own mistress. They had breakfast in their room, Julia in bed, and Michael seated at a little table by her side. She looked at him while he read the paper. Was it possible that 3 months had made so much difference in him? Or was it merely that for years she had still seen him with the eyes that had seen him when he came on the stage to rehearse at Middlepool in the glorious beauty of his youth, and she had been stricken as with a mortal sickness? He was wonderfully handsome still. After all, he was only 36, but he was not a boy anymore. With his close-cropped hair and weather-beaten skin, little lines beginning to mark the smoothness of his forehead and to show under his eyes, he was definitely a man. He had lost his coltish grace, and his movements were set. Each difference was very small, but taken all together they amounted, in her shrewd, calculating eyes, to all the difference in the world. He was a middle-aged man. They still lived in the small flat that they had taken when first they came to London. Though Julia had been for some time earning a good income, it had not seemed worthwhile to move while Michael was on active service. But now that a baby was coming, the flat was obviously too small. Julia had found a house in Regent's Park that she liked very much. She wanted to be settled down in good time for her confinement. The house faced the gardens. Above the drawing-room floor were 2 bedrooms, and above these 2 rooms that could be made into a day and a night nursery. Michael was pleased with everything. Even the price seemed to him reasonable. Julia had, during the last 4 years, been earning so much more money than he that she had offered to furnish the house herself. They stood in one of the bedrooms. "I can make do with a good deal of what we've got for my bedroom," she said. "I'll get you a nice suite at Maples." "I wouldn't go to much expense," he smiled. "I don't suppose I shall use it much, you know." He liked to share a bed with her. Though not passionate, he was affectionate, and he had an animal desire to feel her body against his. For long it had been her greatest comfort. The thought now filled her with irritation. "Oh, I don't think there should be any more nonsense till after the baby's born. Until all that's over and done with, I'm going to make you sleep by yourself." "I hadn't thought of that. If you think it's better for the kid."